You are watching or listening to Purham and Associates. For more information, go to rpurham.com or follow me on all social media platforms and subscribe at RPURHAM. Thanks. See you over there. Hey, good day to you all. Welcome to Purham and Associates. I'm your host, Randy Purham. Hey, I hope y'all had a fantastic week thus far, and that all is well in your magical kingdom. Hey, we got a very special guest with us today. Mary Grabar. She's actually a returning guest. She's been here before. Matter of fact, like a couple months ago. But without further ado, Mary Grabar is the author of Debunking FDR, the Man and the Myths. And she is a resident fellow at the Alexander Hamilton Institute for the Study of Western Civilization and the founder of the Dissident Professor Education Project. She taught at the college level for 20 years, most recently at Emory University, and her work has been published by the Federalist, Town Hall, Front Page Magazine, City Journal, American Greatness, and Academic Questions. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing some and presenting the others, Dr. Mary Grabar. Good morning, Doctor. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm living the dream. I want to go back to bed, but in the world that I live in, that's kind of like impossible. But that's okay. Tell us, Mary, what have you been up to the last couple months since you was on last?
Oh, what's been going on? Well, politically, we've got Democratic Socialist. I would call him a socialist/communist, leading candidate for mayor of our largest city. I've been speaking about that and the relationship to Franklin Roosevelt, who left some unfinished business, to use Bernie Sanders' words, in terms of what the Democrats want to achieve.
Oh, wow. Yes, I'm glad you mentioned Mamdani, that character. I'm like amazed that he's just so bold and open about it. But I want to get your thoughts on this.
Zoran Mamdani just got a ringing endorsement from Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
And get your thoughts on the back end.
When someone stands up and says,
there we go. It started playing before I got a chance to switch it over. Here we go.
Mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani just got a ringing endorsement from Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
When someone stands up and says, I will lead this city by making it more affordable, and here are my plans, real plans to deliver on childcare, plans to deliver on housing. That is the Democratic message.
Is this what the party should look like? The
Yes.
Democratic Party moving forward?
You bet. The Democratic Party needs to stand up and be clear. We are the party that fights for affordability for working families.
All right, Massachusetts Republican Party Chair Amy Carnevale joins me now. Amy, good morning to you. So she is pushing to take Zoran Mamdani's policies national. If that happens, what does the country look like?
Well, I'll tell you, I think this says more about the Democratic Party than it does Mamdani. It's clearly Elizabeth Warren, a three-term senator in the U.S. Senate, has now admitted that this is the future of the Democratic Party. And it is socialism. We have seen under the Trump administration, Donald Trump actually working and delivering for working Americans, but the Democratic Party is not allied with working Americans. They are now allied with the far left progressive elite. And Elizabeth Warren represents that faction of the party, and now she has admitted that the future of the Democratic Party is socialism.
Amy, as the Republican Party chair in Massachusetts, you know a lot about how the money works when it comes to elections. So realistically speaking, if Zoran Mamdani does win the mayoral race in New York City, and he is ahead right now, what does that mean for other socialist candidates in other races? If he wins, does that mean that donors start paying more attention to other socialist candidates, put money into their campaigns to potentially further their political futures?
Yeah, so certainly we've seen the Democratic Party in the past supported by ultra wealthy Democrat progressive individuals, and I think we'll see more of that. A certain number of individuals with unlimited wealth have supported Democratic campaigns. And if we see Mamdani in fact elected, and as you said, he is ahead in the polls, and supported by individuals like Senator Warren, who's been in the Senate a long time, claims to represent the leadership of the Democratic Party, we'll see more wealthy Democrats support these campaigns. And that will then be the future of the Democratic Party. And as a Republican leader, I say bring it on, because I think the contrast could not be more clear.
Well, you say that the ultra-wealthy are supporting the progressive candidates. Elizabeth Warren, writing in an op-ed, says this: there are some billionaires and Wall Street CEOs who can't stand the idea of a mayor who wants them to pay their fair share to create a city that everyone can afford. So the billionaires are dumping millions and millions of dollars into the race, backing either of the two deeply flawed candidates, meaning Cuomo and Mayor Adams. What do you think about those comments from Elizabeth Warren, the senator in your state?
Yeah, Senator Warren is just wrong. She's been singing this from the same play sheet since she ran for president, unsuccessfully, I might add. She claims to represent the working class, but nothing could be further from the truth. She is not accessible to citizens in Massachusetts. She has a record of representing this far left elite. She is not there for the citizens, and we have seen Donald Trump remake the map in terms of what it means to represent Americans and stand up for their rights and needs.
Mary, your thoughts? I know there was a lot there. But.
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to history, what she said, the Republican chairwoman said, was that Elizabeth Warren does not represent the working class and her constituents. And we can say the same about Franklin Roosevelt. He was no traitor to his class, as the famous historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr. said. Actually allied with the elites, beholden to them. The largest contributor to his 1932 presidential campaign was Bernard Baruch, the top Wall Street speculator. And then Franklin Roosevelt in his inaugural talks about chasing the money changers from the temple of our civilization, alluding to the Bible. So the hypocrisy is still there. The talk is about uniting and representing the working class, the common man, the forgotten man. But the opposite is the case, and it's still true now, almost 100 years later.
You're absolutely right about that, actually. And it's interesting that you bring up FDR. And I was just in discussion just the other day, ironically, about FDR, and it was in reference to socialism, and they were saying that America, the person I was having a conversation with was saying that America is actually a socialist nation. And I said, no, it's not a socialist nation. I said we're a mixed market society. Sure, we have some socialist programs. And FDR brought in some of those socialist-like programs with the great the New Deal in the late 30s. But he just kept pressing that America is becoming more socialist. And I had to pause and say, he's actually right. Because we're seeing people like Mamdani, we've seen this other guy up in Minnesota that's just won his race and everything. And you're seeing donors, big donors, they're saying, you know what? Let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. This thing might actually work out this time. And we're seeing, communist China, they already have a socialist-like system. I want to get your thoughts on the transformation that America could potentially go through in the event that more candidates that are running on a socialist platform could win office, and how that would look for the United States.
Yeah, well, just as Bernie Sanders said, the Democratic Socialists are trying to fulfill, the unfinished business of FDR. Mamdani and Omar Fatah, I think Omar Fatah could run for president. He's the leading candidate for the mayor of Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. But what these mayors did was to help fulfill FDR's frankly socialist agenda. You had Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, an open socialist, elected for mayor of New York in 1933. We've got LaGuardia Airport. He's now seen as very mainstream. But, he was limited in what he could do because of the Constitution, but he certainly helped advance FDR's big government programs. So what happened with FDR was he talked about being opposed to Tammany Hall, where the local politicians gave out, public funds. But he replaced that with a national Tammany Hall. And so what I think the danger is with Mamdani is if we get a Democrat in 2028, then Mamdani is going to help fulfill the objectives of the Democratic or socialist president and really strengthen the case. And of course, this is the largest city in the country and the financial capital of the nation and of the world. So there are a lot of potential dangers down the road. And in the meantime, of course, all his big government programs will probably bankrupt the city and make it more dependent on the federal government. So that was Franklin Roosevelt's agenda. Take away local control and be dependent on the federal government giving out these New Deal funds and make it codependent on the federal government.
The idea that they want to take away local control and be more dependent on the federal government, but the federal government will sit back and say, no, you put yourself in that boat, you figure it out. Is there a concern? Is there a concern for that, or do socialists not even think that far ahead? Because the other side to that is Mamdani is talking about taxing the rich and everything else. It's like, okay, you want to advance this agenda on the basis that other people's going to pay for, but what if these other people leave New York upon your election? Now you don't have that tax base anymore. And so I don't know if these people are thinking that far ahead, or are they just that stupid. I'm trying to figure it out. And so maybe you can shed some light on that for us here.
Well, I think it's more nefarious. I think he probably knows that this is going to be disastrous for the city of New York. He's got to know it, but he's a radical, and the radical agenda is to bring chaos and violence. So eliminate the police, replace them with social workers, right? Bring chaos into the city, promise free things, transportation, government subsidized housing, government built housing, just pretty much everything that, we had in the Soviet Union. But that will bring down the system. So that will put more power into the federal government's hand. It will make the city dependent on the federal government. And who knows, if we get a Democrat president, what that president will do in terms of bailing out, New York City. So, those of us who live in, red areas, I kind of live in one, but it's a college town, but it's not. But, where I am, if you go through the countryside and the dairy farms, you see Trump signs, even though, the cities are very blue. But the people who are Republicans, who are MAGA, are going to have to pay for all these programs. And so there, I think, is the real danger.
Yeah, I agree there. And once again, in the same conversation, it was when I asked that question, like, okay, what happens when, the rich decides to leave the country or leave, that city or that state? Well, there's always going to be a tax base. We can just tax the people that's there, type of thing. And it's like, yeah, but you tax them out of existence, So it's a perpetual cycle that will, not advance that agenda per se. And so I don't know. So like I said, they either don't think ahead or they're just logically just dumb. I'm not sure. But Mary, you're actually from overseas. You're coming out of Europe. And you came to the United States, and you're like, yes, I escaped that. I love America type of thing, right? Tell us the dichotomy, if you will, on how our political system, in terms of trying to bring in socialism and everything else, in which Europe has these things, these type of parties and everything else, and you escape from that. Tell us what we're getting ourselves into based on your experience from overseas.
Yeah, well, I was very young. I came here in, when I was 2 years old, so I had no say. But I'm thankful that my parents did escape over the border from communist Yugoslavia, and specifically Slovenia, and spent 9 months in a refugee camp in Austria before coming here, thanks to my aunt and uncle who sponsored us. So I don't remember, obviously living there, but I did visit when I was 12 years old with my family. And I heard stories as I was growing up about, what happened during the war. Of course, Slovenia had two powers invading them, the Soviets and the Nazis. And, there are stories about, people in my mother's village, men got shot, because they belonged to the Home Guard, which was a kind of militia force protecting, the villagers from the Nazis and the communists. There were food shortages. You had to wait in line to get food. And, my mother has a story of when she was a girl, was sent out, get some bread. You wait in line for 4 hours. But by the time you get up there, it's like, oh, we have no more. And so that's the real experience of living under a socialist system. Now, Mamdani wants to have these government-run grocery stores. Well, that's what we're going to have, and who's going to get the food? I mean, this is crazy. I mean, we saw a little bit of that during COVID. I don't know if you remember the bare store shelves, and when I saw those, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like what my mother experienced. Am I going to get toilet paper? Is there going to be bread or whatever?
Right. It's funny you mentioned that because I was in Italy. I was stationed in Italy, in Naples, Italy, during COVID in 2020.
Oh my gosh!
And on the military base, we got a commissary, grocery store, and we're on lockdown as well. People can't leave the base, type of thing. And going to the grocery store, they had to put, signs up saying, 2 per customer on the toilet paper, on different items that was like scarcity. And so what people would do was they would go in and buy toilet paper, and then they'll leave out, and they'll come right back in and buy more. It's like, well, you said 2 per customer, you didn't say 2 per day, type of thing. So we got smart about it, to their credit. They were smart about how to stock up, but next thing you know, after a week, the store was empty. The shelves were empty, and it was just like, okay, now we have to figure out a way to call a friend that lived on the economy or outside of the base and have them go to the grocery store and get the stuff that we need and meet them at the gate and exchange them or throw them over the gate because they couldn't come on base, type of thing. So it was all these different like little nuances that people didn't think about. And it was like, man, just imagine if this was like a actual lockdown society where this was controlled by the government, to where you can only get so much of anything. And so we already lived through a sense of socialism during COVID. And a lot of people probably don't realize, they probably didn't even equate it to that. But we actually experienced that. Mm-hmm. Me growing up in Chicago as a kid in the welfare system, on Saturday mornings, it was a church that was like across the street from my house, a very huge like mega church type of thing. We would go over there and get food boxes, and it was a loaf of bread, a big old can of pork, and peanut butter, a big block of cheese, and it was I want to say maybe a pack of crackers in there. And that was their way of feeding the community. And so you would have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and stand in line for hours on end. And by the time you got your box and everything else, you got home, you were starving and you ate everything in that box. and he's like, man, I stood in line for 6 hours just to, devour, all this crappy stuff, but okay. It's the most expedient thing to do. But once again, it goes back to we actually lived under a socialist idea back then, even, and people didn't equate it to that. They were just like, oh, we're just giving away free food. But yeah, it was like, but those that went to that location, they needed it because they knew about the program. They knew, hey, this is the only opportunity that I can take advantage of this. Let me go do that. And because my mom was sitting me across the street, and I'm like, we got a house full of food. Why am I going here standing? And she's like, just go. Type of thing. And so I say all that to say that I want to get your thoughts on the fact that we actually have experienced socialism, and people don't recognize it. But yet they're willing to embrace something that they actually complained about when they actually had to experience it. Get your thoughts on that, Doc.
Yeah, I mean, the people, the voters who voted for Mamdani in the primary, they've done studies, and these are mostly white, educated people from Ivy League universities. They're not, wealthy. They're just below sort of the threshold to be able to live in New York City comfortably. They kind of have to watch their budget, and they're frustrated, and they've been indoctrinated in this ideology and think that, okay, if we get the right person, this time socialism will work, if they've ever even been taught about socialism or the true history of communism. So these people have not had your experience or my mother's experience. They come from largely upper class or upper middle class families where they never gave a second thought to going out and standing in line for food or supplies. So they have no conception of it. And, that's who this charming Mamdani is targeting. He's one of them. He's very slick. He's very charismatic, and a lot of the, socialist politicians are that way. They're, they have this veneer. They're not, the podium pounding, communists of old, or, even, Bernie Sanders, who's flailing about and, shouting. So Mamdani is very deceptive. And having been, in academia and taught for 20 years, I know these people. I've seen them. People that I went to graduate school with, had these advantages. I can't think of anyone with your background who was in a class with me. They were all from pretty much upper class or upper middle class backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's typically the ones that push these things because they haven't had to experience it. So they look
right.
They look at these, they read these books or watch these movies or whatever they get their information from, and they say, you know what, that's actually a good idea. Yeah, let's try that. Let's do that. But they themselves would not do it. They would not live under that themselves. They would promote it and push it and all of that. And it's amazing to me how to see. I was talking to a politician the other day. And they was a Democrat, and they was pushing for a bill because we're going through redistricting down here in Texas, and so it's a big fight about all of that right now. And I said, so let me ask you.
Right.
I said, let me ask you this. So if you're so concerned that the black and brown community is going to be affected by this redistricting, and you are a Hispanic politician, and if your district is going to be redistricted to, it's going to still be in the same confines for the most part, are you afraid that the people that district now captures won't vote for you because you're a Democrat versus a Hispanic Republican getting elected? And they just looked at me. I say, hey, I'm just asking a question here because at the end of the day, the shifting of the lines really didn't matter because the population didn't change. The lines just did. So there wasn't a drastic change. So are you afraid that there is going to be a capture of more Republican Hispanics versus Democrat Hispanics? Is that your concern? And he just kind of looked at me like, I didn't think about all that. So I was like, I was asking, But Mary, your other book here, I want to get into your other books here because I know I gain new audiences here and there. So Debunking the 1619 Project. Talk to us about that and tell us what it's about.
Well, yes. Basically, after I'd written Debunking Howard Zinn in 2019, which came out in 2019, the 1619 Project came out in August of 2019. It was a special issue of the New York Times Magazine, and it's subsequently become a hardcover book and a children's book. And a curriculum that was ready for the schools that school year in 2019. But basically, what the 1619 Project does is it distorts the founding of this country, and the historical inaccuracies are legion. It claims that, that we declared independence in order to protect the institution of slavery, that this country was founded by or as a slaveocracy because so many of the founders owned slaves, that the slavery here was unlike anything that had existed in the world before. And I think that's a direct quote, whereas the reality is that slavery has been a human institution since as far back as we can go to biblical times. The absence of slavery has been the exception, and we were at the forefront of eliminating slavery. So it's a reversed historical take on this country's founding, the country's meaning, and what slavery was. And of course, it's being used to promote a radical Marxist agenda for today, because the claim is that we still have systemic racism from the days of slavery. And the only way we can get rid of that systemic racism is through reparations and these radical programs like defunding the police and pretty much, what the Democratic Socialists want.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I was, as a matter of fact, just on the show last night. We was talking about reparations, and it was all black panel, and it was a very, very split take on whether or not we should get reparations or not. Here we are in 2025, and one of the panelists said, "Why is it that every time the conversation of reparations comes up, it's always, oh, we have to study about it." We have to study, what that would look like. And it's like, well, black people have been in America since its founding. So what is it that we're studying about? Y'all should know everything that you need to know about black people at this point. So that was a salient point that she made. But my thing is, reparations for when you say black people, that could be misleading. And with the 1619 project with Nicole Hannah-Jones, what she alluded to was, that, for those that are descendants of slaves, they should get, reparations and what have you. But then the other side of the argument is, well, if you're just black and you're in America, you deserve reparations. It's like, well, let's pump brakes there, because you got Africans that come over, just last week, type of thing. They just don't have any ties to America like that, or to the foundational, what I say is foundational or freedmen blacks that actually came through the system, type of thing, generationally. So I can understand both sides of the argument, but that's why we haven't seen blacks in America get reparations in the sense that other nations that's within the United States, like the Native Americans, the Chinese, and what have you, that went through atrocities, that they have received it. So it's an interesting discussion, to say the least. And the 1619 project kind of shed some light on some things that are still unanswered, but it also conflated, as you just mentioned, and gave a revisionist idea of what didn't happen, but they're trying to pawn it off as it did happen. And so it was, when I read the 1619 project a few years back, I was there at that time, and I was like, I was right down the street, in a historic district, so I was like, that's not what I just read last week. But anyways, it was just that I don't know how or who allowed that to go through as academic scholarship. But I want to jump into your next book, or there was the book prior to 1619, Debunking Howard Zinn. Talk to us about that one.
Yeah, well, I first got wind of Howard Zinn when I was still teaching in 2008, actually, and wrote a couple articles about him. And this guy, he wrote this best-selling book that was published in 1980 called A People's History of the United States. Okay, so that was 45 years ago. Yeah. That book is still being published, printed, and it's still selling. It sold millions of copies. It's used in classrooms, or parts of it have been adapted for the classroom. There's the Zinn Education Project that was started by one of his students who became very wealthy, ironically, that pushes these materials to teachers, free, downloadable, easy to digest lessons of propaganda. And it's Marxist propaganda. Howard Zinn was a secret member of the Communist Party USA from the late 1940s, from about 1948 at least till about 1953. And so, like many, he dropped his membership in order to be able to go into one of our institutions, in this case, education, as a history professor and promote communism. And that's how he did. He did it in the classroom and through his writing and speaking.
Yeah. Democrat Socialists of America, this up and coming, well, they've been around for years actually, but they're becoming more affluent in the political landscape within the United States. And you have, communists like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, who's a socialist. You have AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a devout socialist as well. You have all these members of Congress. And matter of fact, I was in a briefing, an intelligence briefing a few weeks ago, and they told us that they're tracking 74 members of Congress who are actually affiliated with either a communist organization or a Marxist organization within the United States Congress. And my question, as soon as he said it, as soon as he ended with a period, I raised my hand and said, why haven't y'all exposed them or did something to get them removed from the government? He said, and I quote, "We can't, because there's their First Amendment right to be, affiliated with whoever they want." And I say, even at the threat of the United States' domestic and international security, he said, yep, even at the threat of that. I said, wow, okay. So here we are, Dr. Mary. We have known terrorists, in a sense, running around in our government. What can we do, from your perspective, to kind of like get back to a space of safety in regards to the political arena?
Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting what you said about that speaker who said they can't expose them. I don't see why not. I mean, whoever is doing the research also has First Amendment rights. But that reminds me of something, about Howard Zinn. He objected to what was called the Karen Act of 1950. And that was in response to the fact that Franklin Roosevelt had let in all these communists into the government, such as the Agriculture Department, the State Department, and they became spies. They were subversives. They influenced the decisions that were made with Stalin at Yalta and in other places. So that was an attempt to expose people who were members of the Communist Party, had a registration, but that was gradually eliminated. This vigilance about communism began to dissipate. Of course, you had Harry Truman, who thought, we shouldn't do anything really, and Eisenhower, who was kind of, weak about it, not really a very strong Republican. And then John F. Kennedy, who basically said, you cannot teach anti-communism on the military basis. So, that was our enemy. This is the height of the Cold War, and you can't even tell soldiers who the enemy is, right? Mm-hmm. So we've lost our vigilance, and I don't know if bringing something like that back would work, but certainly what we need to do is we need to educate people in our schools, to teach about communism, and that's an effort I was involved in writing the anti-communist or teaching about communism standards for the state of Florida. So, we really need to do that, because I've had students who never heard of the word communism. I mean, that's how bad it is.
Wow. I look at it as it's job security for both sides. You know, if you know that there's a threat and you eliminate the threat, you worked yourself out of a job. So it's like, well, now let them manifest, let them fester, let them grow, and we will engage as needed type of thing. So it keeps them employed. I get it, I understand. We kind of did the same thing in the military, but at the same time, it's like we could still be doing something about this versus just sitting on our laurels and saying, oh, we're going to do anything. So it's just crazy to me. It's an interesting concept, to say the least. But Doc, tell people how they can follow you, support you, and share any final thoughts you may have, please.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me again. All my books can be purchased via my website, marygrabar.com, Grabar. And you can also find the articles that I write. I publish quite frequently. Also go to dissidentprof.com, and I have a newsletter that you can sign up for there. And my books can be purchased anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Regnery, which is the publisher. So, I encourage people to get on my newsletter list and to be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you once again. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to be here. And be safe, and look forward to having you back on again soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care. God bless. Be safe.
Thank you too.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Mary Grabar. Listen, hey, that was a great conversation, great discussion. Just a run-of-the-mill gambit of information about what's going on in our society, in our political landscape, in our national security, and all of that. And I would say we have to go back to being vigilant. We have to go back to the 80s era Cold War mindset mentality of we have to watch you because you said something or you did something that could be a detriment to me. We don't think like that anymore. Believe it or not, we really don't. We're so hung up on our smartphones and our devices that we're doing this. I was literally driving down the street the other day, and a guy was walking. I'm sure he was intending to cross the street, but he did not look up from corner to corner, across the intersection. He did not look up, not one time. And I watched him from the time he started, and he was on the phone the entire time walking. And a car in the other lane that was in the turning lane, he came up and he was speeding to try to catch the light. And this guy is walking, and the car had to slam on his brakes, and the guy jumped. With his phone still looking down, he jumped and looked and saw that he almost got hit. And it was like, dude, you just almost like lost your life because it was something that important to you that you wouldn't even pay attention to your surroundings. And I say that to say this: we need to pay attention to our surroundings. We need to look at, and see, observe who's around us, what they're doing, because they could potentially be a threat. I could be a threat to you. You don't know. But we're so complacent now that we just take for granted that everybody's, just minding their business and everybody's on the up and up. As we saw just a couple of days ago here in Austin, Texas, Target. Random guy shoots 3 random people. Just broad daylight, didn't care. Just mental health issues. And it was all for what? So we have a serious problem in this society right now, and we need to take the time to actually address it, deal with it, and do something about it. I'll just say that. Folks, I'm going to jump up out of here. Great discussion once again, and you could, like she said, you could find where all her 3 books, Debunking FDR, Debunking the 1619 Project, and Debunking Howard Zinn. You can find all 3 of those on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever books are sold. And you can check out her Substack and her articles and stuff like that. She's affiliated with the Alexander Hamilton Institute. So, all right, folks, we'll catch you all soon. Don't forget to support my book project. GiveSendGo.com/book project 2025. Still fundraising for that as well. And other than that, I think I covered everything. I need to readjust my audio settings because she couldn't hear me at the top of the setup there. So, anyways, all right, folks, I'll holler at you all later. Take care. God bless. I'll see y'all maybe Friday. I'm not sure yet. Or if not, Monday. All right, take care. And we'll holler. Yep, out of here. I hope you enjoyed today's program. You can follow, like, share, subscribe on Spotify, Substack, Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and your news. And also, you can download Let the Truth Be Told app on your favorite streaming platforms, such as Fire Stick, Apple TV, and Roku. Take care. God bless.